Open up your cameras. So from roll number 30 to 60 MBA, be ready today. You may be asked to speak up anything in between. Okay, so we are giving you a heads up that your cameras should be on, and it will be noted down whether you participate or not. All right, so I think Sir has gone out of the meeting. Anyway, we will start today's session. In today's session, we are going to cover a very interesting and a very important aspect of business communication, which is meetings. And in fact, meetings is always one buzzword or one word which will always be on your lips when you enter your professional life. So it will always be about meetings. So whether you will be attending meetings, or you will be organizing meetings, or you will be doing something, you will be taking part in meetings. So most of the office work today, you will find that people, especially if they are not so in any technical work, they are mostly in the meetings. So like we have already told that there are hardly any work in any organization or anywhere in business which is done alone. So usually you work in teams, and with teams you will have to have meetings, different kinds of meetings. So let me just share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So from the look of it, it looks very simple that what do we have to do in meetings? So, but organizing a good meeting is not that easy, and it is a process which we will have to learn. And there are some aspects of meeting which we need to understand, and that we will cover today. The foremost thing is about agenda. So what is an agenda and how to set an agenda is a very, very important task when you talk about meetings. Then obviously contributing to meetings involve active listening. And it is not just attending a meeting, it's about listening and contributing in meetings. And then another important aspect of meetings is recording of that meeting, and recording in the form of minutes of the meeting. And finally, in many cases, conducting the meeting or hosting a meeting is also one of the tasks which you may be called upon to do in your professional careers. So we will cover all of these things today, and let us see how it goes. So let me talk about that. There can be all different kinds of meetings. They can be formal meetings, they can be informal meetings, and in fact, meetings are organized every day in organizations. And you will have team meetings, you will have client meetings, you will have meeting with different departments or something else for understanding different things. Now, take a typical example of today where you get employed. Say, for example, you get employed in one organization. Let us call it a startup of any sort, which is into developing, or say, for example, it's an e-commerce startup, which is very popular today. That it may also happen that many of you may end up working in an e-commerce startup. So a typical day starts of an employee, of a manager, how it starts. It starts with, so you get into the office, you check your schedule, and the first thing is there is a meeting. And Usually the meetings are with the top bosses or the team leaders in the organization, where they set, okay, what is today we are going to do, and what and also do a follow up of previous days. Many a times the previous things which were supposed to be covered on previous days or weeks, and then there is a follow up, and then in that meeting some agenda is set for the upcoming day and for how you are going to proceed. Then maybe once, say for example, you are in marketing, then what happens is that once you come out of this meeting, the second meeting will be with your team, maybe, and with your team will you will discuss about how you will discuss various strategies, you will discuss the problems the people are having, and that the agenda of that meeting will be slightly different, and the purpose of that meeting will be slightly different. Then, say for example, in the afternoon, you may end up meeting a client or a partner. In that, the agenda will be to, say for example, straighten out issues which have been delaying the customer service, or which has been delaying the product delivery. So you straighten out those issues, and it is again a different kind of meeting. And then finally, you come back and you decide and you meet your creative team to come up with a new marketing strategy or a new marketing campaign for your organization. And then again, you sit in a meeting and you contribute in a meeting, and then the objective of that meeting is slightly different. And finally, at the end of the day, usually good organizations also call it the calling off meetings, where you come together again, you huddle up together, all the team members huddle up together, and they say that, okay, what they have achieved so far in the day, and how will they start their day tomorrow, or what are the things which they were not able to achieve in that day. So these are things. This is how a typical day of a modern day worker or knowledge worker like you begins, and it goes on with meetings one after the other. So they can be, some of these meetings will be very formal. Say for example, there will be a board meeting, or in which you are called upon to do something. It may be a meeting with a client, where we are supposed to give a presentation on your products. So it can be a formal meeting, or it can be an informal meeting where you are meeting with your colleagues or your peers, or your very close team members to decide on the next marketing campaign. So that will be not that formal meeting, but will be an informal meeting. Okay. So depending on what kind of meetings we are going in, usually we set the agenda, we set the different things, how the purpose of the meeting will define how you will record the minutes, how you will set the agenda and do things. So as a knowledge worker, you will always be called upon to organize meetings. So it starts with preparation. Now, if, say for example, you are given a responsibility of organizing meeting, so what is the first thing which you have to do in the preparation phase? How you will prepare the meeting, prepare for the meeting. The first two things which you are going to do as an organizer of the meeting will be to invite participants and set the agenda of the meeting. Okay. So now, agenda is a very, very important task. Setting up an agenda of a meeting is a very important task which everyone should know, and we should be very, very comfortable in setting up agendas, but it's a conscious task and it's an important task. The more formal the meeting is, this task becomes more important. Okay. Even in the informal meetings, setting up an agenda of the meeting is very, very critical. Otherwise, what happens, we end up wasting time. We end up wasting time, and we don't end up on a decision, or we don't end up on an action plan. It is just that we discuss things without any direction. Okay. So agenda has a lot of purpose. So what do we call an agenda? Agenda is basically a list of matters that will be taken up in a meeting. So anything which will come up in that particular duration of that meeting will come up as an agenda. It should come up as an agenda. Usually what happens in a lot of formal meetings, where there is a chairman, or meetings can be of different kinds. There can be a meeting where there is a chairman of the meeting. who is chairing the sessions. So usually in formal meetings, like for example, there is a board meeting. So there will be a chairman of the board, or the meeting is organized by a committee. So the committee will be chaired by someone. Okay, so chairman or the president of the meeting. For example, typically when there is a meeting of deans in our university, it is usually chaired by the vice chancellor or the pro vice chancellor. So there will be a chairman of the board or chairman of the committee that will be chairing. So once you are setting up the list of items to be taken up in that meeting, it has to be done in collaboration with the chair. Sometimes it happens when this is not a very formal meeting, so you do it on your own with the consent. Obviously, when you are responsible and it's a smaller group, it's a group of peers. So you set the agenda. Whosoever is calling the meeting, set the agenda of the meeting. If a meeting is called by the vice chancellor, so vice chancellor's secretary probably will list down the items of the meeting and show it to the vice chancellor, and the vice chancellor will approve that in this particular meeting, this agenda should be there. Okay. So what it helps, how it helps, it sets clear objectives of the meeting. So because time is very, very critical in any particular thing which we are doing. So it sets clear objectives. It provides pre-meeting information. So once you are called upon to participate in a meeting, if you know what is the agenda of a meeting, then you are well prepared, and you have made up your mind, and you have freed up your mind from other things. So that is very, very important today. Okay. Many a times it happens, like for example, when your friends are meeting, so you don't have any agenda as such. So it is a meeting, it's a very informal meeting, you don't have any agenda, and maybe the agenda is more implicit, that to have fun, just to talk around. Okay. But when you are in a employment situation, when you are in professional settings, usually when you meet people, there is an agenda behind that. Okay. So it provides pre-meeting information. It includes all relevant items, and it also excludes what is not relevant. So what happens in an informal or a GD kind of an environment where you are meeting? So there will be some things which are relevant, but there will be some things which will be irrelevant. Say, for example, someone cracks a joke, and that joke becomes a discussion for, say, another 10 minutes. Also, there is a message on WhatsApp, and that becomes a non-relevant item in that particular time frame. So, but in formal meetings, this is very, everything is set beforehand. Informally, when you have meeting informally, then there can be this non-relevant things can creep in between. But if you have an agenda, it will remind you that you have to come back to that agenda, and you have to focus on that particular thing. It also shows the structure of the meeting. So for example, and agenda items should be listed in a logical manner. Logical manner. Say, for example, you are organizing a meeting for planning an event. So what will be the logical flow? That, okay, what is the objective of that event? Who will be the participants of that event? What will the scale of that event? And so forth and so forth. And then, say, for example, you decide on other logistical issues. Logistical issues may come in between or at the end. But first you have to decide what is the objective, what is the scale, and all these things. So agenda item has to be logically arranged. And it shows who is required. And once, say, for example, you list down the agenda items, now you can make a judgment about who the participants of that meeting should be. Now, for example, there is a meeting regarding a new proposal in the university to create a new department or a new facility in the university, a new building. So now once the agenda of the meeting has been set, we can clearly look at the agenda and decide that who should be attending the meeting. Say, for example, the university engineer is required in that meeting. Or for this agenda point, maybe we don't know what about the situation of the finances of the university, because construction involves, though the agenda, if it involves setting up a new thing, it also involves maybe what is the financial position. Can we afford to do it? So this kind of agenda item will require the finance officer of the university to pitch in. So that meeting, the vice chancellor, or if the higher authority is organizing that meeting, they may invite the relevant people for that meeting. Similarly, this also happens in informal and in smaller groups also. In companies, say for example, if you are organizing or you're planning a product, you may require, say, the input from your finance team also. You may require the input from the marketing team also, not just the engineers. Okay, so it may require, so once the agenda is set, it also sets that who is required in that meeting. Okay. And usually it should be distributed before the meeting. Agenda should be distributed before the meeting. And usually in formal meetings, it is distributed a day or two before the meetings. And if it is very formal, say for example, it is a board meeting. You understand what a corporate board is. Board is composed of the directors of a company. And if that meeting is being organized, so obviously their discussions will be, because they are meeting after a long time usually, and so the agenda items are more in number, and it requires more time for preparation and for understanding things. So it should be distributed even a week before. However, if you are meeting daily on a particular say for example, a product process, or creating a new product in your organization, so then it may not, you may not require to set an agenda in advance in a day or two. But obviously before the meeting, say an hour before the meeting or a day before the meeting, you can just create an agenda. Okay, these are the items which we are going to discuss today. So when the people come to that meeting, they are prepared. Okay. Also, if there is a presentation, presentations are required, and you require people to speak formally on certain things or contribute formally on certain things, then it is always better that you allot a time frame to the speaker. And that gives a heads up to the speaker that I have to contribute regarding this point, and this is my allotted time. So it usually is always advised that if you are giving providing an agenda where there are presentations involved, so always give a heads up to the presentees and give them the time slot and the order in which they are supposed to contribute to the meeting. Okay, so it gives a structure and it saves time. Informal groups usually use whiteboards or charts for sometimes you go in a meeting. In today's modern office settings, there are always whiteboards are there, or some kind of people write on that. And say, for example, you are the team leader. So you note down the agenda that, okay, we are going to discuss in the next 1 hour, we are going to discuss these 3 things. So let us brainstorm around these things. So you set the agenda by writing it on the whiteboard for your audience. All right. So this is let us look at one example here. This is a typical example, typically how meeting agendas are formed. And this is a formal meeting which has to take place. So what all it includes? Now I want answers from you. Look at this and let me know that what all it includes. What can you observe from this agenda?
Participants.
List of participants. And yes, if it's a formal meeting, their designations also. What else?
The purpose of conducting the meeting.
Purpose, objective is there.
Date and timing.
Date and time.
List of matter to discuss.
list of matters to be discussed. So what is this list of matters? It is agenda. Okay. And usually this is the format in which you prepare a meeting agenda of a formal meeting. So first is you describe, okay, if there is an objective of that meeting, here it is a meeting of regional managers of Nokia mobiles to be held on so and so date. And if a venue is required, and obviously venue is always required for a meeting. Today, even if there is an online meeting, you put it on Zoom or on Skype or on WebEx. So you put the platform there at so and so time, but everyone knows about it. The following will participate in the meeting, and because it's a formal agenda setting. So you name the people as well as, and you provide a designation also. If it is more formal, like I said, sometimes there is a chairperson also. So chairperson's names come at the very top of that agenda, name of the this attendees list. Okay, and then comes the agenda items. What will be discussed and how it will be discussed? 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it may be. Okay, so this is one example here. And another example here, you can see that it is a more structured way, and it involves presentations. So what it says that it is a design meeting agenda. So the purpose is to get creative ideas for the ABC software, date, place, and time. So it is a more structured way. Okay, and attendees here, they are not basically given the names, but what they have done, they have given the designations of people that who are required to be in the attendees. Okay, and the topic and the presenter and the time slot given to them. So this is another example of setting up an agenda. Okay. So let me just ask you. Let us what we can do. So let us do a small activity here. Very small activity. What I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen, and so you all remember we used Mentimeter in the first class, in the first session. I don't know whether all of you were there, but yes. Okay. So what we are going to do, can all of you see this screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's a small activity. You take out your mobile phones. All of you are using mobile phones. Okay. And go to www.menti.com, MENTI.com. It's written on the top. Okay. Menti.com, and use this code 94084533. Now you have a task here that you have to set an agenda item for a preliminary meeting which you are going to have. You are a student team and you may be a student coordinator with faculty in charge for the college fest. Okay, so you are having a preliminary meeting with them, with a teacher in charge of the college fest. So as a student coordinator, what agenda items would you set in this? So let us take 5 minutes, 2-3 minutes to just quickly get answers from everyone. Please start giving answers on that. All of you are able to follow? It will also give us a list of participants who are active and who are not sleeping, turning off their cameras. Yes, I see the first one, list of members, time and venue of meeting, and purpose of the meeting. I think purpose of the meeting I have already indicated here. What I'm, yes,
So we have to only write the main points, or we have to frame the.
frame an agenda item.
Okay.
Okay, so we have started getting some good responses here. So someone says that, okay, date, the events, number of events and type of events, sponsors and prizes. And then we also have theme of the fest and guests, scheduling of the events. Okay, this is very interesting. The timing of the music concert, it's very important. I understand that. So whether we are having a music concert or not, but timing is very important. Yes, because the girls have to go back to the hostel. So that's the reason. Okay. Time slots for participants to present. Okay, that maybe matters to discuss. Okay, guests to be invited. Allocation of duties. Yes, I think this is a very interesting and very important one, because the agenda item for a preliminary meeting. You are having the preliminary meeting with the faculty in charge. So that is, I think, a very the first meeting you are having regarding the college fest. So very important. The allocation of duties, I think, is one of the very important agenda item should be there. Yes. Okay, so there are some repetitions. Okay, series of events, lists of participants, organizing committee. That's what we mean, that you have allocation of duties. Okay, creating methods to attract more students. Yeah, maybe organizing this, thinking about the scale, that how you are going to have that, the kind of what is the purpose of that fest. Okay, prizes, organizing events for fun activities, list for, okay, menu for lunch, dinner, very critical. But I don't think that it is required in the preliminary meetings. But yes, it is a nice agenda point for the later meetings. Okay, sponsors. Yeah, sponsors are very important, and they should be discussed in the first meeting itself. Maybe a brief discussion, maybe, but when you allocate the responsibility on people to make a list of sponsors, I think that then you can have a larger discussion on the sponsors. How many stalls will be there and who will manage them? Again, I would say that now what we can all do here is try to make a judgment here and to prioritize them. Say, for example, we are going to have a series of meetings among with our faculty in charge or within our committee who is going to organize for college, who is going to organize a college fest. So you can clearly see that I think most of the things which will be covered in these meetings, in all these meetings, is basically mentioned here. Okay, but you can make a judgment that which is the priority one, which should be there in the preliminary meeting, or which should be there in the, say, for example, follow-up meeting, or the third meeting, or when there is more in-depth work is going on. So you can, like, for example, the themes of or the actual events. So they can be a meeting organized only on the what kind of events and how will only on events in the fest. That is a separate meeting. So it can have all different kind of things related to the speakers and different kinds of events and different kinds of timings for the event and kind of decoration you required for that events and all these things. Okay. Uh, Time slot, fest location. Yes, venue I think is very critical and it should be there in the first meeting. I agree. Identify the amount of time to spend on each topic. I think again it may come a little later. All right, so we got very quite a good number of meeting. Okay, someone very good. I think its last one is very good. The preliminary meeting of student team with faculty in charge of college fee fest is to be conducted on 1st September 2021 at 11 a.m. Okay, that's the only thing which is like you can include the student team members and the faculty in charge name in the attendees and the purpose of the meeting, logistics management, guest management, sponsorship, event management, venue. Okay. Yes, I think the priorities may be slightly be different, but overall it is a good one. All right. So I think it is nice that all of you contributed here in this. So let us, I hope that this gives you a clarity, and once next time when you are setting up an agenda, you can make a judgment about what kind of things you have to include in this. Okay. Now let us move ahead. Are there any questions related to this? Yes, yes. I think there is an important point which Sir has raised. I think his audio is not working. So Sir is saying that there can also be notes along with agenda items. Okay, so you can also prepare notes that what are the specifics of that particular agenda item. So when you are writing an agenda item, usually it is a very crisp one, and maybe you are writing a simple phrase or a very short sentence. Then you can also prepare notes for the agenda items. And if, say, for example, the meeting is more formal, usually it is done in formal meetings where you provide the agenda. For example, in university, we have court meetings, AMU court. You must have heard about that. There are court members. It's a very large body. But meetings, they are organized, say, 5 hours, 4 hours meetings, and even longer hours. Sometimes it runs into the whole day. Okay. So for that kind of meeting, and members are coming from all across India and abroad. Okay. So they are supplied an agenda items. There's a booklet that is prepared. For each agenda item, there are notes which are prepared by whosoever is concerned with that agenda item. If the person is introducing a topic or an agenda item, that person provides a background of that agenda item in the form of notes for the participants to have a review. Actually, what is to be included, what the discussion will be about, some preliminary information, what the steps already taken, say for example. So all of these things are part of that notes, and usually notes, and for large meetings, this is distributed way in advance with appropriate time between the meeting and the agenda items which is distributed. So it is given ample sufficient amount of time for the people to review that agenda item and look at the notes and make their own contributions, that how they will be contributing it, plan accordingly. So notes are also very much part of that.
वो नीचे गिर गया है, टेस्टिंग करने वाला हमारे पीछे just.
Yes, any comment?
Sir, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Sir, is there any fixed structure of conducting such meetings, like how we have to design date, venue, something fixed structure?
So there is no no fixed
For formal
structure.
meetings.
For formal meetings, yes, there is a fixed structure, like we have shown you in the previous slides, that how to set an agenda. Okay, usually it is that process, it is that structure which is followed. Okay? When if it is a formal meeting, there are certain things which should be there in the agenda sheet which you are preparing. One is obviously the main objective or the theme of the meeting, the time and the venue of that meeting, and obviously the name of the attendees. Very, very important. Okay, who is coming to the meeting, and then is specifically mentioning each and every item, that what is to be, what are the matters which will be taken up in that meeting. Okay, so that is a structure which is like for formal meetings. That is, I think, the structure which you should follow. For informal meetings, I think it is again up to you. Usually what happens today, nowadays we are using messaging apps, WhatsApp as well as Slack in industry. A lot of people are using project management apps like Trello and Slack. So you get to use, in Trello, what they do in Slack also, they create a small hashtag and they will make agenda items for that meeting, so and so meetings. They will just flash within that particular group of people. Okay. So messaging apps are also being used, and obviously in messaging apps, you don't use very elaborate notes. You will only give a crisp agenda item. Okay, these are the 3 agenda items, and then you move ahead. Okay. Anyone else? All right. So let us move to the second important aspect of meeting, which is the minutes. And what are minutes of the meeting? Minutes are basically the accurate record of that particular meeting. Okay, so that's the definition of a minute. Now, why do we need minutes? The first thing is, why do we need minutes? Because our memory is highly unreliable. So usually what happens, if you are attending, and usually there's a series of meetings you are attending, and one after the other, the outcome of that meeting, basically you may forget about the outcome or the decisions taken, what the individual responsibilities the people have to come up, say for example, in the next meeting, what we will discuss and all these things. So there has to be a record of what happened in that meeting and what was decided in that meeting. So for that, minutes basically are recorded of that meeting. Now, as a knowledge worker, I think it will be very, very critical for you to understand minutes. And usually in your initial career, you will be called upon to note down make summary and note down the minutes of the meeting. And if you know the formal structure of noting it down, it will really help you a lot. There are 3 kinds of minutes which are recorded in different kinds of meetings. So one is the verbatim. The first is the verbatim, in which, like for example, court reporting. So each and every sentence or each and every word which is spoken by anyone, whether it is the judge, whether it is the defendant, or whether it is the lawyer, whether it is the convict, or whosoever it is. Okay. So everything is reported with the time and in exact words. So you must have seen that in courts, what happens, there is a judge sitting and there is a typist just sitting below the judge. Okay, so that typist is basically recording the minutes, and they are doing it verbatim. That's what we call exactly the way it is spoken. Okay, so it is getting recorded every now and in that court procedure. So that is reporting. So in business settings, that's not how we do things. There are 2 ways on which there are 2 other types of minutes which we use in the business settings. The one is the resolution type, where what happens that you don't record the main discussion, what happened in the discussion. Usually in informal meetings, in team meetings, you don't get down into who spoke what and what was discussed and how it was discussed. What you want to basically note down is the main conclusion. What actually resulted in that? What was the main conclusion of that meeting? What can you draw out of that meeting? That is the main conclusion. So you don't record the discussion in that. However, in formal meetings, whether it is business meetings or anywhere, formal meetings, usually the 3rd type of minutes are recorded. That is the narration type, in which you present a concise summary of all the discussion that has taken place. So you note down all the different all the people who spoke in that meeting. You concisely says, okay, meeting started with, say, for example, introduction by the chairman, okay, in which he described these three aspects. Okay, that is the first point. When you move to the second point, after this, the secretary took up the point number one and explained it in detail with these things. Okay, that is narration. So in this way, and then we talk about what was decided in that meeting. We also described about the conclusion, or wrote down that what was the time for the next meeting, what was decided, what was the action which was to be taken after the meeting, who was supposed to take that action. So all of these things, basically, you divide in a narration and concise summary of all the discussion. And I think practicing this kind of, the third one, is very, very important for us as business students, because this is where our test of business communication and our test of the writing also comes into the picture. Here, all the 7 C's of communication will play a role. Okay, you have to be concise, you have to be complete, you have to be correct. Okay, you have to be coherent, you have to be logical here. So all the 7 C's of communication will play a role when you are doing the third type of minutes, which is the narration types. So as a minute taker responsibility, you remember, because we start our career as junior on this minutes are given to the new members or junior members, okay, where they are, it does not mean that you are not supposed to take part in the discussion, okay. So as a scribe or as a minute taker, so you are supposed to take part in the discussion also, but you have to note down everything which is going on in that meeting. So there is the simultaneous, this task has to be like juggled between. So you have to understand everything and you have to contribute also, and you have to note down also. So that is again, it requires a bit of practice and it requires a bit of intention to do it correctly. So the job here, the responsibility here is to take down the notes as accurately as possible and write the notes with responsibility and ownership. That this is, you are doing it. Okay, like what sir always says, that if anything is worth doing, it is worth doing well. So that is what is important here. If you are given the responsibility of noting down the minutes, take this responsibility very, very. Good minutes are very, very important things, are appreciated by the bosses, are appreciated by the authorities a lot, whether you are in the formal setting or in the informal settings. The people who can summarize things properly, okay, and also distributing the minutes for future reference, distributing the minutes to the members, okay. Sometimes the minutes are distributed and members are asked for the feedback before the minutes are finalized, okay. Like for example, usually in formal meetings, what happens, that minute taker takes down the notes, prepare the minutes, and then it circulates the draft minutes to the members, okay. And then members give the feedback that, okay, this point is missing, someone discuss this point and this point is not there. So all of these things are then incorporated in the final minutes, and those final minutes are then kept in the official records. So if you go to the university website, you go to any department in the university, you will find that there are minutes of the meeting of every board of studies meeting. So because all the departments are governed by board of studies, and the faculty members are the members in that board of studies. So after the final minutes are displayed as a public record. So usually in all the government work, when it's not confidential, it becomes a part of a public record also. So the final minutes are very important for and they can be used as evidence even in the court of law. So what you have to do, you have to prepare well as a minute taker. You have to prepare well. Second is, during the meeting, you have to write down actions and conclusions, what took place. And finally, after the meeting, distribute the minutes properly. So these are the primary 3 tasks which you have to do. Now, again, the preparation is very important, and also during the meeting, it is more of a multitasking which you will have to do while doing it. So the first skill actually which is required is very critical here is that include well and you can summarize well. Listen to the feelings of the people, observe the body language. If you are not able to understand any point as a minute taker, you may ask the member to repeat the point or paraphrase the point. Okay, it is your responsibility to make sure that you understand the point. So paraphrasing is also important. So sometimes questioning is required. Okay, and then reflecting also. Reflecting what has been said and summarizing all of these things together. So active listening is very, very critical when you are working as a minute taker. And I'm sure that in your professional life, you will be called upon to take minutes of the meetings. Okay, so I'll skip this. Now, there are some tips for how to take notes. When you are, say, for example, you are given a task of taking the minutes of the meeting, it is always that you quickly draw up a table plan. Usually, I'm talking about the offline meetings, face-to-face meetings. There are people sitting on the table. So you can just note down that who is sitting where. So you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the order. Say, for example, in clockwise direction. And usually it is important and it is advisable if you are given, say, for example, to note down the minutes of a very formal meeting. Say there is a meeting with all the faculty members and the student team, or everyone is there and you are discussing it's going on. And you are asked that, okay, say, Tausif, you are supposed to write the minutes, prepare the minutes, please note down the minutes. So how you should go about it? So what I will propose is that to first look at that how the people are sitting, because that will give you structure to you where to write. Okay, you prepare a sheet, you quickly take out a sheet, prepare a table plan where people are sitting. Then second is you also take out, if it is a formal meeting, all the members must be having the agenda of the meeting, and you already know the list of the attendees. So you can quickly make out that who is present and who is absent from the list of attendees. Okay, once you have the table plan, kaun baitha hai and who is missing. So the people may be absent. So you can just quickly note down from the list of attendees. And if there is someone who is called upon, but who is not part of list of attendees, so that the name of that member should also be written there. At the last moment, say, for example, with the permission of the chairperson, there is one addition in the name of attendees, where it is not there in the formal list. So write down, okay? And then take a printout, have a printed agenda in front of you. And then you can also, because you can note down in front of that agenda. Say, for example, it is an agenda in a table format or in the list format. So on the right-hand side, in front of that agenda, you can use the space to note down that what was the discussion on that particular agenda item. Who spoke, what they discussed, what was the conclusion. So that will help you summarize things. Okay. And underline what are the actions to be taken, because every meeting is organized with a purpose. There is some action points, some key takeaways after the meeting. So underline those main things, that these are the actions that have to be taken clearly. It has to be done by what date, and it has to be done by who. Who has to perform this action. So it is always advisable to do this when you are taking the notes of the meeting. Okay. Now, once you have done this, write the notes. If you need some clarification, ask the members for clarification. Sir, you explained this point, you discussed about the point, but I was not clear about this aspect. Can you just rephrase that what you meant? So paraphrasing and questioning, because of active listening, you can do it. And then you have to structure the notes properly. Okay. So always remember that there are 4 things what you aim for in a minute. The background, which will basically comes through the discussions or agenda items, then the actual discussion which took place, the decisions which were taken in that meeting, and finally the actions which are supposed to be taken after the meeting. Okay, so you have to be authentic here. You have to be complete. Complete. Your minutes should not miss out on information. So completeness is a very important part of that task, and you have to be concise. You don't have to write elaborately on what was discussed, who said what, but you summarize the whole discussion. Okay, it should not use any ambiguity. It should be as clear as possible, as concrete as possible, I would say. Okay? And usually it is done in the past tense. Okay, this was discussed in that meeting. Then this matter came up. It was dealt in this way. Okay, and this decision was taken. So usually it is done in the past tense. Okay, so always structuring the minutes requires you to understand it from the perspective of the beginning, the middle, and the end. So let us look at this structure. The beginning means the heading, then the attendance. Now attendance, noting down attendance in formal meetings, it is very, very critical. Okay, to note down who was present, who was in attendance, but it was not, maybe they have been called upon at the last moment. They were in attendance in that meeting, but they were not part of the invitees in the first place, maybe. Okay. Then there were some people who were not present, but they had sent their apologies. Usually in, say for example, when there is a court meeting, I told you an example of AMU court, or in very formal meetings. So there will also be apologies. The people who are not who could not make it to the meeting, they will send a written apology. Sometimes the recorded apologies are sent. Okay, that they were unwell or they were in some other activity, so they will send their apologies. So whosoever send the apologies, and finally the people who are not present in the meeting and no information is available about them, so they are completely absent. So you note down all of these things. Then usually it happens that in formal meetings, you confirm the minutes of the previous meetings. Okay, then what happened in the previous meeting, the final confirmation of that minutes is also done. Usually in very formal meetings that happens. The previous meeting, that will be the item number 1. It is sometimes in formal meetings like court meetings and executive committees meetings and board meetings, that is the default item number 1. Default item number 1. Confirming the minutes of the previous meeting. Okay. Then, which were the matters which arrived from the previous meeting. That can be also part of that beginning of that part. Now, once you have written that beginning, then you move to the middle part. And then in the middle part, you take up the business or the agenda item wise, that what happened in one particular agenda. Okay. Go through in order of the agenda. And in fact, in formal meetings, you have to keep the numbering also the same. Okay. Like item 1, what was the discussion? Okay. So everything has to come under item number 1, because this serves as a reference also. Okay. That so and so in that meeting, item number 1 was, and with reference to item number 1, this is what we have to do. Okay. In formal meetings, in those setups. And make a record of what was said. Brief outline of the discussion, actions which are agreed on. Okay. And who has to take up the action? Who is responsible for that? Maybe you can write the initials when you are taking the note. Okay. Initials of that person or all that. But that is, this action is the responsibility of this person, and by this date that action has to be completed. And at the end, you have these 3 things, which is any other concrete business, or if there are items which were not part of that agenda. Okay, they were not part of that agenda, but which were brought up between when the discussion was going on, and the chairperson of the meeting or the committee decides to include that in that meeting. So it's called any other concrete business. Okay, any other complete business is also included in the minutes of the meeting. Okay. So usually when we have our board of studies meeting, we write that any other matter with the permission of the chairperson. Okay. Then the date of the next meeting usually, and the chairperson's name and the date of that, basically the salutations are there. The finally, that's how. So usually what happens that it's very important that once you have completed the minutes, you file them properly. Maybe when you are using electronic records, proper folder, proper naming of that file and all these things, and also distributing it. Okay, it's very, very important, because usually what happens that human works on 80-20 rule. 80% of the people will forget what the actions had to be taken. Okay, so they will forget about what they were supposed to do. Only 20% of the people will remember those things. So it is very important to distribute them as quickly as possible. So this is one sample template is there, and if you go on Google, you will find there are so many templates of meeting, and usually companies, they follow their own styles in that. Okay, so usually in a formal setup, this is how you do it. You first write the minutes, location, date, time, and sometimes the purpose of the meeting. Okay, say for example, it was a board meeting, it was a meeting to discuss the new product development, and so on and so forth. Then the attendance list of all the attendees, and attendees I already talked about. There are three kinds of attendees. Okay, there were people who were part of that committee and they were supposed to do. There were people who are in attendance but were not supposed to be there. The third may be the people who have sent their apologies. The fourth may be the people who are completely absent. Okay, and then the agenda item list of agenda items. So what you can do, when you are doing the narration type. Okay, so you basically in the agenda discussions, you write everything together. Sometimes when you are doing a concise summary, okay, you are not only the resolution type of minutes where you like all the agenda items together, all the action items together. In business world, in corporate settings, we don't go for very elaborate minutes. Okay, narration type is not used. Resolution type is used. So what was the discussion? What was the decision taken? Who is supposed to take what? Who is supposed to do what, and by what time? That's it. Action items. So this is basically one which is followed very well in all the organizations. So I think we have already crossed the time quite a lot, but I wanted to finish this. So if you have any questions, if you have any queries, we will take up the conduct of the meeting and the other things tomorrow. So if you have any doubts, if you have any queries regarding the minutes, please feel free to ask.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, who distributes the minutes?
The person who writes the minutes. And if you say, for example, maybe you are working as an assistant to the chairman of that meeting. Okay. So the person who writes the minutes is also called scribe. SCRIBE. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So scribe writes in the name of the chairman of that meeting, if it is a formal meeting. Okay. Otherwise, if it is an informal meeting, then say for example, if it's a team leader says, okay, please, you can distribute that. The person who is organizing the meeting, they have the responsibility of writing the minutes and distributing the minutes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
It may happen that a particular member may be assigned to just write the minutes and give it back to the chairman, and chairman may distribute it. That may also happen. Yeah, sir has mentioned another point. In formal meetings, leave of absence granted to absentees may be mentioned. So that the apologies part, which I told you, in attendance, there are people who are not present in the meeting and they have been granted, say, for example, leave of absence by the chairman due to some other, they have contacted the chairman and they have given their reason that they will not be able to attend the meeting. So that will also be recorded in that meeting. So any point which is missing, anything which you think is there, and I please go and look at some templates out there, because you will be called upon to write minutes somewhere down the line. Okay, as a student, as members of any team, you will be asked to basically note down the agenda. Sometimes you will be asked to note down the minutes or the summary points, or in because corporate world is changing. So there are more informal ways of doing all of these things, and more electronic ways of doing these things, where you're using apps like project management apps and all these things, where there are sometimes their templates are already given. Okay, so guys, go and check all of these things, very important, but you should know the process. And good minutes, good summaries are always appreciated by the higher ups. Okay, by the bosses, by the supervisors, they're always appreciated. It's a very important tool to make a impression also on the people. All right. So I think it's time now. So I'll take your leave, and thank you very much. I hope if you have any doubts, you have queries, we can discuss it tomorrow also.